name is Stephen Riznyk, and my goal today is to help you with crisis control. If you're an entrepreneur, a manager, somebody in HR, every company has crises. And lately, since the situation became public with United Airlines, we've been swamped with questions, emails, phone calls. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? Etc., etc., etc. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go into the article that I wrote and just have a casual conversation with you and explain to you some of the things that are involved in crisis control. And I highly recommend you share this with your staff, because when you have a crisis, just like a natural crisis, like an earthquake in California, for example, you don't wait till the last moment. The government is fully prepared with everything that has to happen, because at that moment in time, emotions are high, thinking's not straight, it doesn't make sense. So what you want to do is every month or so, have a look at this and see what you can add to it that applies to your company. You know, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. 80% of it will work for most companies. 20% depends on who you are, what you do, what your core competence is, and how you do things, of course. So I'm not picking on United, because in all honesty, part of the reason this affected me so profoundly is our law firm had decided this year that United Airlines was going to be our international airline of choice. We got their credit card, we got the miles set up, everything, because my personal experience, I've had great service with United. I haven't had any problems with United, thank God. But I was kind of concerned about what did happen, because I do have to fly a lot because of my negotiations. And for some reason, I end up caught up in these situations a lot. Government employees have told me that I'm the kind of guy who looks like he's transporting money abroad. I ask them, what do you think, I'm a drug dealer? Why do you check my bags every second trip? Or I'll ask a question, like I remember before liquids were not allowed. An officer turned around and I asked her, I said, I have a question out of curiosity. You're x-raying my water. It's see-through. What do you think that you'll see? She called the police over, put me on a watch list for 6 months. Every single time I traveled, they checked my bags. So you get these kinds of situations, and they can be quite brutal, and they can happen in any company. I can list off a litany of issues that have happened to our firm, to my clients, and unfortunately, you can't unring a bell. So when a crisis occurs, if it's mismanaged, it will keep on reverberating, and then, with social media and the internet, people can destroy your company in a heartbeat. So today, more than ever, it's important for you to manage your crises. As soon as that seed starts growing, don't wait until it's a fully flowered plant, because it will be too late. And we just saw this. So if you want to see my article called Business Owners Keep This Crisis Control Directive in Your Files, Lessons from United Airlines, it's in my website, San Diego Biz Law. If you look under litigation, the litigation tab, there's a sub-tab called Negotiation, and you'll see it there. And you can turn around and add to it, remove, customize it, etc. But let's go through some of these things. Let's have a casual conversation, and let's see what we can learn so that we manage our crises effectively. Number one, try to resolve it with something that comes easily to you. So we had a friend of mine, because there are cases that we take on that we normally wouldn't, but for friends we will, because we normally don't manage anything that has under $100,000 in play. But he had a problem with a company, I won't mention names, that kept repairing his car, but they actually kept damaging it the more they repaired it. And at the end of the day, what started out as a $250 estimate ended up being, I think, a $25,000 bill or something. So long story short, Of course, the usual. They take no responsibility, blah, blah, blah. It's the car that was falling apart, they stated. But they could have simply stated to him, look, why don't I give you an overall tune-up and a checkup free of charge? This way you'll know what's going on, what can happen in the future, and you'll realize that we're doing the right thing. It would have cost them, very few dollars. You would have had a happy client. Instead, they kept escalating until we had to deal with the CEO's office. And in the case of the airline, enough frequent flyer miles, somebody would have gotten off the plane, probably even the pilot. I'm just joking, of course. Or incentives, you could have gotten the person off. Because more importantly, even if this didn't end up in social media, as a video, people could have, typed it up and put it in Yelp or a number of places. That could have gone viral. People on the plane, of course, will tell their friends about what they had to see. You see a guy who's got blood coming out of him being dragged down the aisle, and this isn't a criminal, this is a passenger, a customer. So the first thing that I would recommend, if something goes wrong, try to offer the person something that you can offer that doesn't cost you a lot but has a high perceived value to the person, because it'll show an offer of good faith from you, and it may just make them one of your most loyal customers ever. We've had that situation because at the end of the day, those of us in business realize one thing: the customer is not always right. There are customers with an attitude before they walk in. We deal with people all the time who hate lawyers, but they come in because they need us, so they resent your services, and we try to tell them to hire someone else if possible. But you're going to have that. And then there are some people who are narcissistic. They're always right, you're always wrong. It doesn't matter what happens. So you're going to deal with a number of personalities when you're dealing with the public, and it's not always easy. And it's not always easy to make them happy. But what's important is you treat them as an individual. Now, I've been doing this for 29 years. I've seen a lot, and I'm hoping that some of what I tell you today will change the way you do things so that you can improve them even more. You're probably doing them well already, but so that you can improve them even more and, increase your satisfaction rate. But more importantly, take some of the people who are really upset and turn around and make them happy. Make them happy and make them feel like they're the only customer you have. So that at the end of the day, they feel that loyalty. I'll give you an example of something that happened to us. We had a case where it was an employment case. And in the employment case, the man was offered severance, but he had stated to us that a number of things occurred. Now, after we worked up the case, we kind of found out that the client was not exactly, well, let's put it this way. There was nothing to prove anything that he had stated. So he wasn't exactly in the best of situations because the other employees were family members. He wasn't. So when he started the case, they had wanted him to sign a severance agreement, take X amount of money, and sign away any rights to sue or arbitrate or somehow, oppose the employer. And the lawyer in our firm told them, no, don't sign that because then we can't take on the case with everything that you've stated. Well, unfortunately, the other side isn't going to tell the truth. They're all family. They're going to stick together to their story, make him out to be the bad guy. After we had ended up, because you see, we had to work up the case, but you couldn't work it up if you signed the severance agreement. So we had to tell him not to sign it. And at the end of the day, when we found out that there was nobody and nothing that would support what he stated, well, obviously you can't take that to court. He was very upset with us, and I asked him what the problem was, and I called him. Turned out to be a very reasonable man, even though his emails were very severe. Stay away from texting, emails, Facebook to communicate with your clients, because there's nothing like the written word, listening to the tone, where you're coming from, how you feel about things. Well, long story short, he stated that he had worked with us and he had lost money. And I said, this is a contingency case. How did you lose money? We are the ones who supported the finances on the case. We said that he had given up the severance, which actually wasn't that much money. It was $2,500. I say not that much money. You know, it could have been $10, $20, $50,000. So it wasn't the end of the world. Now, we did conduct, a lot of work on this case. We did spend a lot of time on it. So we made our investment in it. However, at the end of the day, for some reason, that $2,500 really bothered him, even though this was supposed to be, a six-figure case. And so I called him, and I discussed the issue with him. And I told him, I said, look, this really upsets you. You have to realize that we did work on the case, but you see, that didn't matter to him. He was looking at it from his point of view. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you your $2,500 back, but, we can't continue a case that has no value. He was extremely happy. We now have a good relationship. He's going to refer his future business. It didn't cost me an arm and a leg to give him that money back. It was not something, as I stated, number one, try to resolve it with something that comes easily to you. I didn't try to sell him on, let me create a living trust or something for you. But we gave him that money back. If I would have kept the money and stated, look, we've put thousands of dollars worth of work into this case, why should we lose? And the only way we could have worked it up is if you didn't sign the severance. Would it have gotten me any farther? No. Would I have a happy client? No. And at the end of the day, you've got to realize any client could be the one that refers you the business you've always been looking for. Or they could be that very person. We've had clients who've looked us up 15 years later and found us in a different city because we've been in Los Angeles, San Diego, Dallas, London, and we've decided to concentrate all of our efforts in Southern California now rather than having staff scattered everywhere. But they've looked us up later. They liked what we did. They liked how we did it. And they wanted to work with us again. So, again, if you can resolve it quickly and easily, do it. Because once that click goes on and they keep proceeding, it gets to the point, and I'm talking to you as a negotiator, it gets to the point where there's cognitive dissonance, that even if they're stating what to you seems to be a lie or an untruth or mischaracterization, misrepresentation, they believe it. They justify it. Just like the person, let me explain to you cognitive dissonance. You'll have a wonderful employee, but that employee decides to steal from the firm after hours. Nothing major, a little bit of equipment here, a little bit of equipment there. And this is an employee who thinks of themselves as honest, hardworking, and everything. But cognitive dissonance is a mechanism in our mind, the way we think. They say, well, look, I've worked all this extra overtime. I've done this for them. I've done that for them. I made them a lot of money. They owe it to me. So they justify the fact that they're very honest, but they're still stealing. So there you have it. Let's go to number 2. And by the way, on that note, feel free to comment on this video, and I'll respond to the comments if you have some experiences of your own or something else. And let's make this a valuable conversation, because crisis control is something every company has to worry about all the time, not just some of the time. Okay, number 2 is quite straightforward. Avoid calling the police for a non-criminal incident. Some of my clients in executive offices have actually called the police or their internal security guards at the building to have people thrown out who are disputing something. What better way to alienate someone? I mean, seriously. And the other thing to consider, the police are not trained in gentle customer service. They are not trained in working for the Ritz-Carlton and wearing white gloves. They're trained in dealing with usually bad people who need powerful restraint. They're not bad people, but they have a certain set of tools in their toolkit. These are the tools they're used to using, and they will use them. And the bigger problem that you face when you call the police, Let's say that passenger, Mr. Dow, flailed his hands at United Airlines and hit an officer. He then could get charged with assault on a police officer. Now, a doctor has a criminal record. Think about this. Does it really serve you to call the police? And first of all, you're taking police away from doing their job, which is fighting crime. You're bringing them into a civil situation. They were wasting their resources and their time, and you're getting them to work for you in what should be done with your client in customer service, sitting them down and trying to reason with them. No matter how upset they are, offer them coffee, offer them tea, water, a drink. Try to talk to them as quickly as possible, because as it escalates, it does take on a larger size in their mind. And then right here, it takes up time even when they're not with you. So they're thinking about this, they're stewing over it. It doesn't get any better, it gets worse, let me guarantee you that. Number 3, show them who the management really is and demonstrate compassion for the situation. As I stated earlier, you're going to deal with narcissistic people who are always right. Doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, every person, even if they're narcissistic, for some reason, believes in this situation that they're right. Sometimes it's going to be really tough for you to figure out how they made this happen. How do they see themselves as right? But it's your job as an entrepreneur to sit in their shoes, feel what it's like from their position, and try to understand what the situation really means to them, not to you, to them. So you have to divorce yourself from your feelings. You have to stop being defensive. Well, but we did this, we did that. That doesn't help. Try to understand this situation. Show them that you empathize. Because if nothing else, you can have a hard to deal with client, and you deal with them in one way at the lower levels, but when they get to the higher levels of management, they have to know that the management cares, that they're empathetic, because that speaks to who the company, or to what the company is, I should say. So when it gets to the management level of the crisis, whether it's in the media or out of the media, they have to know that management is compassion, that management will sit down and listen. And that's a problem that the United's facing, because a number of company owners, CEO types, have spoken to me, and they said they're afraid to put their staff on there because they've got conferences, this, that, and everything. And if they can't make it on time, they know that dealing with upper management isn't going to get it resolved either. So when you have that, you create a roadblock, and as a result, people will just go elsewhere where they know that the management will state that, I really think this was wrong. And there are a couple of other issues I'm thinking about, but the nice thing is I'll address them in the next few points. Okay, here's one, number 4. The police use this all the time. I don't like this one at all. Don't anger a customer and then accuse them of being belligerent. And I've had this happen to me before. Of course, at airports, it's today the customer service level with airlines is deplorable. It's one of the worst places to do business for me. I really don't enjoy the whole attitude of they're doing me a favor. This 9/11 gave the airlines a lot of power. Everybody can be arrested, detained, withheld, thrown off a plane. And unfortunately, you get lower level employees who have this kind of an attitude. Look up the Stanford Prison Experiment on Wikipedia. You'll understand what the human mind is like. And if you get someone with either low self-esteem or doesn't feel good about how the world treats them, it's a perfect job for them.